Members of the late former Zambian President Kenneth Kaunda have gone to court in a bid to block his burial at the country's presidential burial site in Lusaka. Kaunda died on the 17th of June. We're now joined by SABC International News Editor Sophie Mokoena on this. Sophie, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to the agenda. First of all, what's the basis of this court application?
Well, you know that there's always tension when one has previously occupied the highest office in the land. You find a situation when a person passes on. There are arguments in terms of even the drafting of the program and who should speak, where, when, and how, unless there was a proper arrangement with the family prior or with the person involved prior. And therefore, we find a situation in Zambia where the government wanted to bury the late former President Kenneth Kaunda at an embassy park. That's where they bury their former heads of state. Now, the family, as per the instruction of or request or information that was communicated to the family by late former President Kaunda, was that he wants to be buried next to his wife, Mama Betty, in their farm, the state lodge residence. That's their original place. And he wanted to be buried there because Mama Betty was buried there. Now, there was this tension between government and the family, government insisting that he must go to Embassy Park, and the family had to go to court, and the court has ruled in favor of the family, saying that the final word will be the family. You know that it did happen also in Zimbabwe. In fact, there's still tension where there are reports that the current Zimbabwean government is aggrieved that former President Mugabe has been buried at Kutama. They still want his remains to be taken to the Heroes Acre. And there is tension between the family and some of the chiefs in the village. And it is not the first time. It's now happening in Zambia. But in South Africa, it's a different case. When you look at what happened to President Nelson Mandela, even though he spent most of his time in Johannesburg as a former head of state and also as a head of state, even before he went to Robben Island, his body was taken to Gunu because that was his wish to be buried in his ancestral land in Gunu. And therefore, there was communication between the government and the family even before he passed on. There were proper arrangements and they followed the script.
As you've mentioned, Sophie, that the court has now ruled in the family. So what does it mean about his funeral, which I understand will be starting at 10 a.m. in just under 30 minutes? So will this affect the funeral service in any way?
We are told that yesterday the information wasn't clear whether today the funeral will commence, but we are waiting for confirmation because it is a private funeral. Media was not expected to be there, and therefore we will know later today whether finally they did bury former President Kenneth Kaunda at his farm. And this is a private family affair, and therefore media is not invited. Maybe later the family is likely to release photos or videos for the burial, but we can't guarantee that we will be able to get videos or still pictures or information because it is a private funeral. With former President Mugabe, much as it was a private funeral, very few media was allowed in Kutama when he was laid to rest, and our team was there. We were invited and we did cover the story, but in this instance, we don't know whether we will be able to access any information in terms of the final resting place of former President Kaunda.
You know, Sophie, you know that as Africans, we are very particular when it comes to burial and where our loved ones are buried and how and all the processes that are involved. So what does this case say about respecting the wishes of the dead? I mean, you made reference to the Zimbabwe, the Robert Mugabe case, and as well as the Nelson Mandela case, wherein they did indicate that they wanted to be buried in a certain place. So what does it mean, or what does it tell us about the authorities, you know, tenacity to abide by the wishes of the dead?
It is, you know, embarrassing, but also unbecoming of politicians to want to cling on history. With Zambia, it's even worse. The late former President Kaunda was not a member of the ruling party. And therefore, for the governing party and the government to insist that he be buried at Embassy Park, it is out of order when he has issued a directive that he wants to be buried near Mama Betty. There is no link. In Zimbabwe, maybe the ZANU-PF would want to cling to Mugabe's history, because this is what happens with politicians. They want to use anything to cling to power. Sentimental issues. Zambia is going to the election. Perhaps they wanted to use the funeral, you know, almost for campaigning, because there's no campaigning, or to hold on to him so that those who supported him can perhaps think of perhaps even voting for the ruling party or the governing party. The same in Zimbabwe. Many people feel that it is the ZANU-PF, the party wants to cling on Mugabe's history, even though the relations between Mugabe and the current president were frosty. We know that before he died, when he went, a day before he went to the poll to vote, he indicated that he will never vote for those who tormented him. So he died a man that's not happy with the ruling party, ZANU-PF. But then to come back and want to cling to his corpse or his, you know, his remains, it is indeed a problem. And particularly when people have indicated what they want. In South Africa, there is Madiba in Kuno, and there was no tension whatsoever. I think it is, that's politics. Unfortunately, it's politics. And politics sometimes have no shame.
Yeah, it is indeed politics, but then does it invoke legalities? I mean, for instance, the Kenneth Kaunda case, the government, when the government issued a directive that he should be buried at the Heroes Acre, does that directive have a legal standing? And did it take into consideration the rights of the family? Because remember that in as much as Kenneth Kaunda was, you know, a citizen of Zambia and a public figure, but he was also a member of the Kaunda family.
It doesn't have a legal standing, because if it had a legal standing, the court will not have ruled in favor of the family's wish or family's request that he be buried in his private property. And the family has won the case because the government position had no legal standing. And I think in many cases, that's what's happening. You look at the United States of America. The Bush Sr. was buried where the family wanted him to be buried. And later the wife was also there. And we know that as we speak, his grave is being maintained by the Bush Foundation and the Memorial Museum. It is not the government of United States of America that is responsible for the maintenance of his grave. I think this is what must happen. People must choose. If people have chosen to be buried at Heroes Acre, it's fine. If a person has indicated that he doesn't want to be buried there, I think the government on the continent must respect the wish of the individual, but also the family. The family must have a final say. With Madiba, the family had a final say in every step the government took in terms of whether memorial, his health support system, and even his burial. The family took a decision, and the government did agree with the family or supported the family in terms of what they wanted.
And I suppose it underscores the importance of indicating our wishes when we die while we're still alive, especially in the stature of a president or a former president, doesn't it?
Yes, that is why when people are questioning media, when media houses do preparation in terms of should anything happen, it is wrong. Media must be ready, and we know it's part of life that at some point in time somebody will pass on, and therefore be prepared rather than saying it's unbecoming to prepare, because you are able to avoid such tensions. And I think even the government itself in Zambia, they knew, they were not supposed to resist when they were told by the family what the late former President Kenneth Kaunda wanted. And I think it is, like I say, even the media houses know that we have to be on standby for certain stories, because they will happen. It might not happen in our lifetime. Maybe by that time a particular new crop of journalists or editors will be in that institution or that media house, but you have to prepare. These are stories that do happen, and they will happen because people do pass on. And when you deal with high-profile people, you must always make sure that you tighten anything that can lead to confusion and tension between the family and authorities.
All right, Sophie, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That is Sophie Mokoena, the SABC foreign desk editor, just commenting and reflecting on the developments coming out of Zambia. Well, the news just in is that the court has just ruled in the favor of the Kaunda family. Remember that the family went to court in a bid to block his burial from taking place at the Zambia's presidential burial site. So that is the big story coming out of Zambia. But for now, let's take a quick break.